Have you read a book by Bruce Chatwin called What Am I Doing Here? A great title. Actually, it was not Bruce Chatwin, it was Rimbaud, the French poet, who happened to travel in Ethiopia, and when he got there, he asked himself in French, what am I doing here? So Bruce Chatwin took it from Rimbaud, I'm taking it from Bruce Chatwin, what am I doing here? I'm not young anymore. I used to be young. I used to be young as you are now, and I was a stagiaire in Brussels. I studied international law. I was 22. Back in 1979, can you imagine? It was a great time. I was researching my thesis on the protection of human rights in the, at the time, common European market. What was that at the time? And it took me just a couple of days to realize that after all the fundamental human rights in the EEC at the time were actually all right. So I had 6 months of fantastic time. But it was in Brussels that I decided to become a journalist and a writer and really change my mind. I've been interested in Europe since. How many of you are over 30? I'm not talking about Michele, because I guess you are, and a few others here. But how many of you are over 30? One. How many of you are under 20? No one. Under 20, wow. Under 20. A sample, how many are 25? Good. Just a couple of more questions. It's fascinating. Can I ask you how many are from France? And England? Or UK? Stay with us. Anyway, okay, here we are. I've been introduced as a writer and a columnist, and I'm an editor now, and I'm probably too often on television, but something not many people know, in Italy some people know, but definitely you don't know, is I've been an actor as well. I wrote a play, and let's see if it's there. I can show you something. We can, I've asked them to wait for the first slide. Let's see if it's coming. Yes. My fault, because I changed there. Okay, let's see. Yes. La vita un viaggio means life is a journey. I wrote this play, and we took it around Italy, 50 different theaters. All the time was full house. It was amazing. People paid the ticket, and they didn't want the money back. And I really took it very seriously. I devoted 1 year of my life. And why I'm bringing this up now? Because La vita un viaggio, life is a journey. It's a story of a man, it's me, I'm playing a character. A man of sort of in his late 50s at the time, and he gets stuck in Lisbon, in an airport, with a much younger woman, sort of late 20s. And they are stuck there because there are no flights, there is a strike, and there are 3 women actually. There is also a third person. In Brussels we had a this is a Brussels poster, as you can see. And it's not what you imagine. This man is actually quite fatherly, patronizing, at times boring, and he wants to explain to this young lady who's in deep personal crisis, basically she's resigning as a European. She's moving to Brazil, she doesn't want to know anything about Europe anymore, the way she's not finding a job, she's not treating well as a woman, and she's just deeply disappointed. She's originally from Italy, but she worked in Belgium and in England, and she's like 29 and she wants to leave. I don't want to know about Europe anymore. And he tries to explain her that, it's important and so on. He tries hard, but he becomes pretty annoying, and she's annoyed. And the two clash for an hour on that stage. But then, as often happens, women are smarter, so she realized that he plays, the man self-assured, but he was also in crisis for a completely different reason, personally, and so on and so forth. So in a way, the two realize they can really help each other. And at the end of the night, everyone has managed to help the other. And they take, one goes to North America, she doesn't go to South America anymore, she's been convinced to stay in Europe after all. There is a good fight, there is a fight to it's a good story. At one point, sorry, that's me, that's Marta Rizzi, the young actress playing with me, and we're sitting in an airport, as you can see. At one point, I tell her, we discuss about European identities and about, she says, I don't know what I am. I was born in Rome, I worked in Milan, I studied in Brussels, I lived in London, what am I? And I said, well, you're European to start with. And I say something in my, at that point we were already getting along pretty well, Marta and I, on that stage. And I said, look, think of yourself like a tree. If the trunk of a tree, if you look at the rings, those rings, they happen to be, your central ring is Rome, then you got Milan, then you got Brussels, then you got London, but it's the same tree, it's you. And there will be people around you that will try to convince you that those rings are not communicating with each other. If you're Roman, you cannot be Italian. If you're from Italian, you cannot be European. And it's not true, because everyone in this room, everyone on that stage is part, we are formed. And was I convincing, was my message got through and the young Italians voted passionately for Europe? No. This is the cover of my magazine. That's maybe the next government. There was a fortnight ago. You see Matteo Salvini, the League leader, and Luigi Di Maio, the Five-Star Movement League. And the question is, where are we going? We don't know what they're going to do next. I think it's likely at this point there will be a government somehow. I don't know why. I don't think 1,000 MPs are likely to give up and say, okay, let's vote again. I think there'll be, from inside those two parties, a strong will to say, okay, we did it. Now we have to try something. And it's only fair that they try. Why half of the Italians half the Italian voters voted for a party that at least nominally talked about Europe with passions but opposing Europe. And that is the real problem. The problem is, in Italy and elsewhere in Europe, the only people that talked about Europe with passion, are the opponents of Europe, or of the current Europe. The people and the parties and the leaders that are supposed to be European, every time they open their mouth about Europe, they criticize Europe, without passion, but criticizing. I had a couple of personal heated discussions with some Italian leaders of former government, actually the actual government is still there, the present government. Why every time you open your mouth, dear Matteo, every time you criticize Europe, those people are better than you at opposing Europe. Why don't you try And then when Macron was elected, Matteo Renzi, I met him at the Obama event when Obama spoke in Milan. We have known each other for 10 years, Matteo Renzi and I, since he was a very young man in Florence leading I think I interviewed him for the first time on television. It was me, 2005. So I've known him. And he came to me and said, Beppe, did you see Macron? He said, I'm telling you, did you see Macron? He said, l'Europe qui nous protège. He didn't use Europe. Doesn't matter what you think about Macron or politics, but I think it's important to convey an idea that Europe is not a negative thing. I think that should be improved, should be corrected, but it's not your your enemy. I think it was a disaster. It happened in the UK too. I was there for Brexit. I've been writing for The Economist for years. I know Britain not as well as Italy, but it's my second home in Europe. Because whatever happens, look at UK is in Europe. The same happened there. Europe is a scapegoat. Actually, even worse, Europe as a punching ball. Something you can just go and hit it and the British government at the time, David Cameron government did it, the Italian government did it, and they all paid dearly for it. Because in a way they played in the hands of their opponents. I think there was a deep emotional attachment to Europe on the part of the opponents of Europe, of the current Europe. The Five-Star Movement and the League had a passion when they talk about Europe that the Democratic Party in Italy or the Conservative Party in Britain or the Labour Party in Britain, they didn't have. And this emotional attachment to local and national identities is much stronger. This is a photograph I took in Brussels. I gave a speech there like a couple of years ago near the Berlaymont, where there was a stagiaire. I went back many times. And that's my little town, Crema, near Milan. Crema is well known now because it's the star of the movie by Guadagnino, Call Me By Your Name. It's all filmed in Crema, so we're very popular. I have tourists under my windows taking pictures in the square because they're exactly from my office. So that's a view from the top of my, that's a drone, but that's over my office. So obviously the emotional attachment to the local identities in Europe are stronger, and we have to accept that. But I think that if I have to find a title for what I'm going to tell you today is Unaffective Europe. Unaffective Europe. The fact that we could not convince people that Europe is something to be loved or to be appreciated. Why such an emotional, let me insist on this word, emotional failure? I think there are reasons that we all know, but let's recap them quickly. Number one, national selfishness on immigration that convinced everybody that everybody is taking care of his own country. Look what's happening now with France and Italy. We are supposed two countries close. For many reasons, politically, geographically, culturally, Number two, absurd fiscal competition in a supposedly common market. Ireland did it, the Netherlands did it, Luxembourg did it, Cyprus did it, the UK did it. This has consequences. You cannot, I think you cannot pretend to be a family if you have 5-6 members who are taking care of their own. I tried to discuss this in Dublin. I realized how touchy this subject is, but that's something that in a family, this happen will leave a mark. Number three, aspirational Brussels speak, that normal people yearning for the security of a lost age, that what happened with Brexit, and it's happening, cannot grasp. I realize that often. How many people in Italy have been a stagiaire as I have? I had the luxury of having a European life as I had. Not many. And you have to take care of all the other and explain the advantages. I remember we had this, I had this conversation with President Barroso and others. He introduced a program that was called A New Narrative for Europe, and there was a bunch of European writers and journalists, mostly writers, involved. So we went to 3-2. And one of the points is that the communication disaster. We could not explain the enormous advantages that the European House, now European Union, formerly European Common Market, has brought for all of us. You have to know, it's not that we tried and we failed. We didn't even try. I proposed seriously. And I think Frau Merkel was in the room at the time, definitely in Milan, Enrico Letta at the time, Prime Minister was, and they say, Europe Day, when is it? Let's see if you are prepared. When is Europe Day? How many did you know? Europe Day is May 9th. Honestly, okay, they're honest. Quite a few people didn't know. And in this room, the majority, I mean, I've learned it 3 years ago, so don't feel guilty. But the majority of you in this room, which is the most European room probably in Southern Europe today, this morning, you didn't know that May 9th is Europe's Day? Anyway, my proposal is, forget about Europe's Day. Didn't work. Make it no Europe Day. You stop everything that Europe helped to create. You reintroduce border controls, passport controls, everything. All the safety measures that you have, all the things that in our life that improved. You sell toys that are dangerous for children just for a few hours. Then you stop them, parents from using those toys. But the border control, you know the only government that took me seriously, and the Goethe Institute, so you know the answer, decided it actually was a great idea. It was the German government. They say, the Goethe Institute, the central say, we should actually consider this. Having one morning on May 9th, stopping Europe. And so people realize how much Europe affects their life. Of course, in Italy, I went twice to Palazzo Chigi, we discussed it, and after we did it twice, I said, no more. It was completely waste of time discussing about this. Okay, so the only way, I believe, to go ahead with Europe is do it less in the next few years and do it better. Talk less, do more. Concentrate on a few things we have to do and explaining clearly to people instead of having broad, huge programs, because we're going to see what happens next year with the European Parliament, but I think it's something that we have to consider. It's another cover of my magazine. It's a question. In the end, are we going to end up all divided? I don't think it will happen. But I think the next 2-3 years will be crucial. Of course, I'm not telling you, and I could, to say how I was in Poland and I covered the end of communism in Poland, and I was so happy. In 2004, I was in Warsaw when Poland entered the European Union, and I could see, back in the family, the Poles are absolutely European. They're crucial in European construction. And to see what's happening now in Poland, it makes me very sad. But it's not with the saddening of a 60 years old that will change things. The thing is, you have to convince enough people in Poland and everywhere else that Europe is good for them. It's not a threat, it's good for them. If people are worried, you should listen. You cannot talk about huge issues and grand idealistic issue if families have children who do not find a proper job in their countries. I know the Commission cannot provide jobs to people of your generation, but they should do more than what we're doing now. I think your generation, it's crucial. My father, he passed away last year. He was almost 100. He fought in World War II in the Navy. He was an officer in the Navy and has been a lawyer all his life in Crema, in a small town. And he was a passionate European. Why? Because my father witnessed what happens when the European countries, they go from, arguing with each other to fighting with each other. We consider, even me, my generation was born in 1956, we consider that inconceivable. Be careful, be very careful, because Europe has been at war for all history, and it just stopped because of the European Union. in the last 67 years, 70 years, what is it? Okay, my father was European. I was a European because my life, it brought me only good things. To me and my generation, it was like a movable feast, Europe, for many of us. And you are our children, but don't give it for granted. The fact that so many of you stayed at home when the referendum of Brexit happened, it really made a huge difference. And it's making a difference everywhere. You give it for granted that what you have now is going to stay with you for a long time? I'm not sure. 4.5 million Erasmus, as you know, students took part in the program. The best ideas that Europe ever had, because Erasmus program do not produce European project, European regulation, European directives, European whatever. It produces Europeans, a noun, and you are the 4.5 million, 633,000 Italians. Keep Europe and carry on. And don't forget, since last thing, I was talking in Silicon Valley, in the United States, to people who run those companies, and it was a private conversation, so I won't mention any name. And this person, who's worth I don't know how many billion or billion, told me the only people that we take seriously is the European Union and the European Commission and the European Parliament, because the only power that we recognize, European government, not even the American government that are worried about, the only people that know that they really have the knowledge and the experience and the power to talk and challenge and those issues that we're all talking about is Europe. Just one small example of how powerful we are. And we have to explain to people, if you manage to explain that everything we are reading about Facebook, if we can find a solution, is a European solution, maybe it's already a good start. So thank you, have a lovely couple of days. Now I'll be here for another hour to listen to the other speakers, then I have to go and put my paper to bed. Thank you.